Good morning, Parkview. How's everybody doing today? Awesome. Well, let's all stand together. Teach you a new song this morning. It's called There's Nothing Our God Can't Do. You believe that? All right, let's sing it. Just one word, you calm the storm that surrounds me. Just one word, the darkness has to retreat. Just one touch, I feel the presence of heaven. Just one touch, my eyes are open to see. My heart can't help but believe. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a mountain that He can move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. Just one word, you heal what's broken inside me. Just one word, and you revive every dream. Just one touch, I feel the presence of heaven. Just one touch, my eyes are open to see. My heart can't help but believe it. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a mountain that He can move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a prison wall He can't break through. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. Sing this out, I will believe. I will believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There's no power like the... Let's sing that again. I will believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There's no power like the power. I will believe. I will believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There's no power like His power. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a mountain that He can move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a prison wall He can't break through. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. There's nothing. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. There's nothing. Let's sing it one last time. There's nothing that our God can't do. Amen. So to those that you want to sit down, you can be seated if you'd like. Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Let's sing it out. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn, I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah, yeah. When I was your foe, when I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. I felt no worth. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Sing it out, come on. Whoa, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Whoa, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah, yeah. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't sit down, coming after me. Sing that again. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't sit down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. The overwhelming, never-ending, the chasm that lay between us, how high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Could imagine, who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. The cross is spoken, the cross is spoken. I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Let's sing hallelujah together, come on. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Let's sing that again. Then came the morning. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Jesus, yours is the victory. Oh, hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah.
was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it.
All right, well, we're going to be jumping right back into John, and we've been on this journey through the Gospel of John. So if you're here today, if you've got a Bible with you, a physical Bible, if you've got your phone, if you've got an iPad, if you have a hologram, however you want to access God's Word here in front of you today, go ahead, and we're going to be jumping right into John chapter 6, and we're going to jump in and see that Jesus is this worker of signs and wonders, and there's some pretty significant things about what Jesus is going to do and that we're going to look at today, but there's some significant things that he's going to do in chapter 6 that really are going to reveal even further to the people who he is, what he came to do, what he came to be, and his identity and his credentials. And so we're going to jump into that. But I wanted to start off today by really thinking about this idea that, everybody is looking for something. We live in a world where we're all looking, I think, at different times in our lives for signs. Maybe we're looking for a little communication. Maybe sometimes we are even confused at a certain time in our life, or we want clarity on something. And so I think that we all ask God to give us direction. We ask for wisdom. And a lot of times we look for signs. We look for different communication in the world and say, is God behind that? Is he directing me in this path? But everybody's looking for something. And so I read this last week about this guy by the name of Vince Rosmiarek, and he actually lives in a little town called Indian Hills in Colorado. And in 2013, he became the curator or the caretaker of the Indian Hills Community Center bulletin board. And so this is going to be perfectly appropriate for us to see some of what he puts on his bulletin board because it fits right in with Father's Day, okay? Because we are here on Father's Day, and one of the things that fathers are notorious for, I guess, is dad jokes. And so one of the things that happened here with Vince Rosmiarek is he started off with just normal messages, and then in April of 2013, the April Fool's Day to be exact, he got a little dad humor crazy. And so we're going to look at some of these signs. So this is Vince right here. Let's go ahead and see some of the things that he puts up on a regular basis. So this one says, my mood ring is missing, and I don't know how to feel about that. Yeah, you can groan. These are all mostly groaners. Okay, this one says, in search of fresh vegetable puns, let us know. Okay, all right. Next one here, irony, the opposite of wrinkly. Okay, so that's pretty good. Yeah, that was better. Okay, all right. He says, if you are buying smart water for $5 a bottle, it's not working. Okay, so, I think there's some definite truth to that one. And there's this other one here. It says, be the person your dog thinks you are. All right, and, I know sometimes I think that was the last one, if I remember. You can go to the next slide, Eric. But basically, as we look at really what's happening with Jesus, and we're going to look at that in today's text, everyone's looking for something. Now, what's interesting about these slides that I just showed you, and what's interesting about Vince Rosmiarek is this. So he starts doing these dad humor signs, and it becomes a phenomenon. And he actually now has, on the Indian Hills Community Sign Facebook page, over 143,000 followers, and it's represented of 54 countries. So there's people from 54 different countries that daily are following what is being put up on this sign. People are looking for something. One of the people that is interactive with this Facebook page, one of the followers made this comment. They said, this little place saves my life most days. In a world that seems to have lost its mind, in a world with so much negativity, just a simple sign with a groaner of a dad joke can tweak somebody's perspective and maybe give them a little bit of hope for the day. We live in a world where everybody's looking for something. And those jokes may be groaners, but they illustrate this point very well. People are searching. They're looking for a sign. They're looking for something that's going to point them in a better direction than maybe where they've been. And so we're going to jump into Jesus' miracles that we're going to look at today, and we're going to see that the people in Jesus' day are no different than us. They were looking for something as well. They were looking for a sign. They were looking to be pointed in a certain direction. And we're going to look at some of the ins and outs of that because Jesus is going to do some amazing signs that people are going to kind of miss the point, but we have an opportunity to get the point, to search after something and go in the right direction, the direction that Jesus wants us to. So the people in Jesus' day were no different than us. They were looking for a sign. And what they're going to find is they're going to find these Jewish people, these people that Jesus comes to as their Messiah, they're going to find that Jesus really is doing things that were promised ages before. He is the prophet who was to come. So let's read, and let's jump into John chapter 6, and let's look here, and we're going to read the first 15 verses. It says, sometime after this, Jesus crossed the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is, the Sea of Tiberias. And a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. So Jesus' name is getting out. We've looked at many things already throughout John. We see that he's got the right credentials. He's being pointed out by John the Baptist. He's being pointed out by other people that, hey, this is the Lamb of God. He's doing miracles. He's turning water into wine. He's healing people. He's teaching. He's overturning tables in the temple. I mean, this guy, Jesus, is on the move, and his actions are becoming well known. And so he goes to this other side of the Sea of Galilee, and a crowd is there. Let's pick it back up again here in John chapter 6, verse 4. The Jewish Passover festival was near, so people are looking for a sign. They're looking for something, and they come after Jesus. Verse 5. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, "It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one here to have a bite." Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. He said, "Here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish, but how far will those go among so many people?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. So when they say in the Bible text that 5,000 men were there, this is a patriarchal society. They're not really counting women and children. So there's more than 5,000 people here. There's 5,000 people that are coming out looking for a sign, 5,000 men, plus all the women and children. So we might even be talking about a multitude of 8, 10, 12,000 people. We're not totally sure. But there's 5,000 men that sat down. Jesus, verse 11, then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over, let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. Verse 14, after the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, "Surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." We'll save verse 15 for a moment. So what's going on here? I want to suggest to you that Jesus actually is an artist, okay? Jesus is awesome. Jesus is smart. He's a great teacher. He does miracles. He's got the right credentials from God. But Jesus is also, he's got a flair for the dramatic. And he basically goes here to the far side of the Sea of Galilee, and he ends up bringing these people to this desolate side of the Sea of Galilee. I've got on the next slide here a map so you can kind of figure out a little bit about what's going on. So on the left there, you'll see there's a larger body of water and then up top a smaller body of water. The larger body of water is the Dead Sea. And kind of right towards the top to the left of that is Jerusalem. And then if you go straight up that line there, that's the Jordan River, and the Sea of Galilee is the smaller body of water at the top. And the Sea of Galilee, there's a little bit more detail on the right-hand side, was mostly populated on its west side, but on the east side, it's more desolate. So Jesus, knowing that he's drawing a following, knowing that people are starting to get the word about him, knowing that the miracles and the things that he's doing are starting to draw a crowd to himself, he basically goes over to the desolate side where there's just not very many people, there's not very many villages. He draws this amazing multitude out there, and there's nothing to eat. And I want to suggest to you, I think Jesus knew all along what he was doing here because he speaks to his disciples. Remember what he says in verse 5. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" Philip says, "I don't know." And Jesus says, "Well, I do." And so he begins to do this wonderful miracle. He feeds these 5,000 people. He multiplies these 5 small loaves and these 2 fish into a meal that can satisfy the multitudes. Jesus, I want to suggest to you, is doing a piece of public performance art here. And it's really cool what he's doing because he's pointing out and he's connecting with the people on a deep level. Jesus, in doing this work, is drawing, these are Jewish people, remember. They are just totally entrenched and they are basically very familiar with the Old Testament. Their hero, or one of their heroes, was Moses, the one who was the deliverer that took the people of Israel out of Egypt and took them into the promised land many, many, many years ago. And we're not going to go there for sake of time, but if you went back into Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 15, and verses 17 through 19, and Deuteronomy chapter 34:10, there's other places in the Old Testament where this is said as well. But what you will encounter there is Moses, this great leader from a few thousand years earlier, is leading the people out. And as he's getting ready to close down his ministry, he starts saying to the people, there's going to become a prophet like me, but greater than me, that's going to come. And you must listen to his words. In fact, if we were to go there, one of the things that we would read in Deuteronomy chapter 18 and 34 is that God is going to put the words of his mouth into this prophet who is to come, this new and greater Moses, and he is going to call to account anyone who does not listen to my words that the prophet speaks in my name. So what's Jesus doing here? He knows there's a crowd coming after him. He takes himself and his disciples over to this desolate side where there's no food, there's not a lot to drink, there's not a lot going on. He knows that this crowd is going to come after him, and then he does this amazing miracle. And for the minds of the Jewish people that were experiencing this, it would draw their minds back very naturally to Moses. Because they would think, who else do we know in our history that brought bread down from heaven, that fed multitudes? Moses, the man that came down. Who else do we know that did miracle after miracle to sustain us and to meet our needs? Moses. And so the people get this. They get this. Verse 14, it says that after the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world. We talked about the fact that John is a gospel and he loves the number 7. And he's got 7s all over in his gospel. There's 7 signs that John records. There's many more things that Jesus did, but he records 7. It's a number of perfection or completion. And this is the 4th sign that Jesus is performing. And it draws these people's minds and hearts to the place of realizing this sign points us to the fact that this is the prophet. This is the guy that was supposed to come. This is the deliverer. This is the promised one, and he's here. But notice what happens. The people get it. They get it. They get that he is Moses, the Moses to come. They get that he's the prophet. But notice what they do with it in verse 15. Jesus, so they're like, this is the prophet. Verse 15, Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. Jesus does this amazing performance art. He shows once again that he's got the goods, that he is the Son of God, that he is the anointed King of God, that he is the prophet to come, that he is this new and greater Moses who's come to supply all the needs that humans have. And the people get that, but they have their own agenda, and they have their own plans, and they want to forcibly make him their king. They understand that he's the new and greater Moses, but they miss the point, and the point is that Jesus' work, his purpose, his credentials, everything about him is way bigger than what they think they need. They think they need bread. We're going to see as we go on in chapter 6 here, this is setting the stage for Jesus to basically point out to the people, you're only coming to me so that you can get physical bread. You've got to eat me, drink me. And they're like, whoa, that's freaky. That sounds like cannibalism. We'll look at that here next week. And that's not what's going on. What's going on is that Jesus is drawing the people more and more into revealing who he is. He's this special one sent by God. They get it, but they miss the bigger point, that his plans are far bigger than what they can realize. And we're going to see that now as we jump into verses 16 through 24. So he's done this feeding of the 5,000. Now we jump to the 5th sign in John, and this is going to be Jesus walking on the water. Verse 16. So Jesus is off on the mountainside. He leaves his disciples all the time. They're like, we don't know what to do. Okay, let's go out on the lake. Let's go fish. Let's go do what we know. So when evening comes, his disciples go down to the lake. Verse 17. They get into a boat and set off across the lake for Capernaum. By now it was dark, and Jesus had not yet joined them. A strong wind was blowing, and the waters grew rough. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus approaching the boat, walking on the water, and they were frightened. But he said to them, it is I. Don't be afraid. Then they were willing to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the shore where they were heading. The next day, the crowd that had stayed on the opposite shore of the lake realized that only one boat had been there, and that Jesus had not entered it with his disciples, but that they had gone away alone. Then some boats from Tiberias landed near the place where the people had eaten the bread after the Lord had given thanks. Once the crowd realized that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they got into the boats and went to Capernaum in search of Jesus. So the people, they're still on their agenda. They want to make Jesus king. Jesus disappears. He's outie. He jets off, and he basically goes to pray and to focus. The people are looking. The crowds are looking. They want to make him their king. The disciples, they don't know what to do, so they basically head off away from the desolate side over towards Capernaum. And while they're on the lake, lo and behold, a storm comes up. And this is something that I haven't been to the Holy Land myself, but I've talked to many people that have, and I've watched videos and stuff. But one of the cool things about the Sea of Galilee is it's really it's not that big in reality. I mean, it's a pretty good-sized body of water, but it's not that big. But the wind whips through there often, and there are these vicious storms that come up, and it can become very choppy, very dangerous, very scary. And so the disciples go back onto the water, what they know. They're out there, the boat's being tossed around, and all of a sudden here comes Jesus, strolling through like this. Or, maybe he was moonwalking, although I think that's more looks like spasms probably to most of you guys out there. But, he's out there, and he's just jetting along. He's on the water, and they're like, what in the world is going on? This is really freaking us out. They don't even know it's Jesus. They're just like, is this a ghost? What's happening? But then Jesus speaks to them. He says, it is I. Don't be afraid. What's going on here? He's doing the performance art. He's letting the crowds know that he is the Moses that was to come, but now he's doing a very special work, a very special sign for his disciples, letting them know that, yes, I am Moses. This is going to draw their minds back to the Red Sea. Moses parts the Red Sea, and the people go through to safety on the other side. Here's Jesus, the prophet to come, who's now showing that he has complete authority over nature and over water. He's not only the supplier of human need that can give bread, but he controls everything. These guys are basically getting tossed around on their boat. They're getting seasick. Peter's throwing up over here. They don't know what's going on, and all of a sudden, here comes Jesus, strolling around. I don't know how to do a cool walk, actually. I'm not a cool guy. I joke with my kids sometimes that I kind of went from, I'm just going to do my cool movement up here for a minute, but I kind of joke, that I basically went from I thought I was cool in high school. I probably never actually was, but, being kind of cool when I was younger. And then as I work with the youth or talk to the youth, I'm like, the nice thing now at 44 is that I know how uncool I am, which makes me cool once again. So it's basically this kind of big thing that kind of goes around. But, here's Jesus, the man. And he's doing this sign for his disciples. Why is he doing this sign? Because they need to get something that we all need to get. Jesus, the king, the prophet who was to come, he's not just the supplier of bread. He's not the person to be taken by force so we can make him a king in our own image. He is God in the flesh, the Word in the flesh, and he is walking on the water, and it is under his power, and everything's under his control, and the disciples are freaked out, but then he says, it's I. Don't be afraid. And they take him into their boat. And then he's going to rock their world, actually, in some ways that they never imagined. They might think that they got rocked on the waves. Jesus is going to rock their world throughout their whole ministry together. The crowds are clamoring for Jesus to fulfill their own desires, but Jesus further reveals his glory and his power to his disciples. And it really just sets the stage for them to know, whoa, this is way bigger than we ever thought it was going to be. We don't even know who this guy is, really. We're just starting to get a glimpse. Yeah, he's done cool things. He's turned water into wine. He's made bread for the multitudes. But he controls everything. He's in charge. He's the one. We've got to take him in and follow his purposes, his path, his ways. It's not about us. It's about what he wants. They take Jesus into their boat amidst the storm that they are in. We're going to stop there in John for today, but I just want to kind of ask a couple of questions as we kind of move towards closing today. First of all, what kind of king is Jesus? And what kind of king are we looking for? Jesus has all the credentials of the king, and we've looked at a lot of those as we've gone through John. But the choice that we have to make and the question we have to ask is, will we forcibly push him into our plans, or will we invite him in to rock our boat? I think this is a really important question during this phase. I actually struggled a lot. Sometimes I struggle, but usually I kind of know what I want to say, and I pray, and I feel like God really helps me a lot of times to share what I want to share. But I really struggled in some ways about what to share here. I was kind of thinking, I wanted to maybe get political and offend everybody, like offend the right and the left, and just kind of maybe get killed or something before I left here today. I started thinking about how do I want to talk about this, where do I want to go with talking about Jesus as King. And I guess I'll just start by saying that, I had something very awkward and weird happen yesterday. I had a civil political conversation on Facebook. Now, you're thinking, Justin, that's a miracle right there. Do not tell me that happened. I know that's not true. But no, I really did. I had a civil political conversation yesterday on Facebook. I posted something that was kind of a different perspective from the predominant perspective. It was written by an African-American gentleman, and it was a good discussion starter. And I had some good back and forth with different people. But I was thinking about this conversation, and I was thinking about where we're at in our world, and I was thinking about the fact that we're in this season of coronavirus, we're in this season of racial upheaval, we're in this season of it's a time of sifting and shaking. This is a really excellent time for us as God's people, if you're here today and you know Jesus. And if you're here today and you don't know Jesus, this is also a big question for you to ask. This is an excellent season for us to ask ourselves, what kind of king do we want? What kind of king are we really trying to have? Are we trying to force Jesus into our mold, our image, or are we going to let him come in and be our king? I think the American spirit, we love every 4 years, every 2 years. It seems like there's a lot more elections now than there was when I was growing up. It used to be like 2 years and 4 years. Now it's like something is on the ballot every week. I mean, Grandma Jane needs a new hip replacement. Let's go ahead and vote on a bond to see if we can replace the hip. There's just something always going on. There's schools, there's this, there's that. But every 4 years at least, we get into this season in our country where it's like, oh yeah, let's go ahead and vote. Voting's not bad, but let's vote, and let's go ahead and take hold, and let's basically go with what we believe, whether it's left or right, and let's go ahead and let's grab a king, and let's probably maybe put God over the top of it, and let's try to take control, and let's try to make the world in our image. And I'm not saying it's wrong to vote. I'm not saying it's wrong to have political opinions. Some opinions are better and stronger than others. But this is really an excellent time for us to step out of our Americanism for a little bit and to step into the reality that Jesus is the only king. We can vote to the best of our conscience, to the best of our ability, but in our day-to-day lives, in our moment-by-moment lives, in what we do, how we treat people, we have to take in Jesus, and we have to let him take us into his kingdom, his work, and it's got to be on his terms, not ours. So really the bottom line for today is, what are we searching for? As we encounter Jesus, because these aren't just nice stories where, we have a flannel board and Jesus is there and he's got the blue sash and the white robe, because that's how Jesus looked, of course, and he's basically bopping along the waves. These aren't just stories, these are realities of the world. That Jesus is the one who can give every need, he can supply every need we have, but he's also way bigger than any agenda we might have. And we have to continually let him challenge us. The bottom line is, what are we searching for? There's a man by the name of Oscar Wilde. He's a famous 19th century poet and writer. Here's what he said towards the end of his life. He ended up in prison. He ended up at the heights, and then he went really to the depths. Here's what he wrote. He said, "The gods had given me almost everything. I had genius, a distinguished name, high social position, brilliancy, intellectual daring. I made art a philosophy and philosophy an art. I altered the minds of men and the color of things. There was nothing I said or did that did not make people wonder. Tired of being on the heights, I deliberately went to the depths in search for new sensations. What the paradox was to me in the sphere of thought, perversity became to me in the sphere of passion. Desire at the end was a malady or a madness or both. I grew careless of the lives of others. I took pleasure where it pleased me and passed on. I forgot that every little action of the common day makes or unmakes character, and that therefore what one has done in the secret chamber, one has someday to cry aloud on the housetops. I was no longer the captain of my soul, and I did not know it. I ended in terrible disgrace." There's so much going on in our world and in our country, in our own lives right now. But we can't lose sight of the fact that our choices daily, moment by moment, have got to be made in light of what Jesus wants for us. And our King, our great King, who is the King of the universe, who did walk on water, does not necessarily, or really does not most often, call us to places of power and privilege. He calls us to self-sacrificing love. He calls us to take on his cross. He calls us to die to ourselves, to our rights, to our desires, so that we might love other people so sacrificially that even as they trample us over the top of us, they know there's something different about the love that we have. We all end in horrible disgrace if we don't let Jesus come into our chaos and become our King, our ultimate real King. I just have a few thoughts here, few things to take out. Number one, today is Father's Day, and so this isn't meant to be guilt in any way, but fathers, we have out there by the Welcome Center, which is kind of that wood-paneled bar area right outside the doors. We've got a men's devotional for you. Sorry, I wish it could be a fishing trip, or some, deep sea excursion or something like that, but it's a devotional. It's very nice looking. You get to go to the forest, and it's called Man of God Rooted in Christ. Maybe you've already got your own rhythms that are bringing you into reflection so you can see Jesus as your King, but if not, grab one of these, or even if you need another tool, grab one of these, because fathers, we have to take headship seriously. We have to take leading our families closer to Christ seriously. We have to take ourselves going closer and deeper with Christ seriously. Number two, Americans. That's everybody. That's not just fathers. That's not just men. Americans, don't grab at a temporary king. Make the King the focus of everything. And then really the third thing is that we desperately need to drink Jesus in daily through his word, through walking with him, through prayer, through listening to the Spirit, so that we can proclaim his death until he comes. I'm going to go ahead and close with prayer, and the worship team's going to come forward, and then we're going to be jumping into communion. And I just encourage you, as we take communion here together in a moment, I encourage you to really be thinking about where you're at with Jesus, where you're at with his kingship, what that's meaning in your life, and then we'll go into communion with that thought. Father God, we love you. We thank you for your grace and your mercy. I just pray, Jesus, that you would help us as we encounter your word to really, truly let you shake up our categories. Let you bust open our boxes. We want to compartmentalize you and tame you, but you're the untamable God. You are the Logos, the Word become flesh. You have tented among us to show us your glory, and your glory, your goodness, your beauty, your salvation, your hope can change everything. And so, Lord Jesus Christ, we just ask now that as we take the elements together here in a moment, that you would help us, Lord, to really, really drink you in and reflect on these things. It's in your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.
Sing this hymn together. When I survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died, my richest gain I count but loss, and pour content on all I found. See from his head, see from his head, his hands, his feet, sorrow and love, sorrow and love for me go down. Didst overwhelmed with the whole realm of nature mine, that were an offering far too small. Love so amazing.